Welcome again to another episode of B2B R&D Conversations. I'm Ellen Williams, CEO of B2B R&D, and joined once again by my co-founder and COO, Craig Yoris. And today we're going to be starting with a recap of how we've been enjoying these video experiments prior to getting into our main topic for today. So today we've used our fourth video tool, and it is Google Hangouts. And with all of the complications we've had along the way in the last 4 weeks, although this one's really popular, it definitely had some hurdles. Have you been enjoying the technology issues we've been having there, Craig?
I think enjoying is sort of not the right word. I think the right word would be I'm experiencing all of the technologies that we've been dealing with, if that makes sense.
It's been a ride.
It definitely has. Like you said, this is the fourth technology that we're using. We've gone through OnStream, Hoover, GoToMeeting, and it's very interesting to see how difficult and yet convenient these tools are. This one today, it's taken us about a half hour to get this going this morning. This afternoon.
So I wanted to admit that.
Yeah, no, I am fully willing to own up to the fact that two what I consider very intelligent people took 30 minutes to get Google Hangouts working. But that's okay. We had never used it before for something like this. So I imagine people who've never used these tools before to have even a larger learning curve. So they need to make them easier, I think.
I agree. Well, the good news is there are multiple tools out there, and we'll continue to explore, and I suppose eventually we'll come to a conclusion on which one works best.
So what's your favorite so far, if I can ask?
I think the easiest one, honestly, was Hoover, because it was made for exactly what we're trying to do. These conversations, having both of us on the screen simultaneously, the same size, sort of what you would see in a newscast. So that one seemed to, once we had it downloaded, work pretty well. The others seemed to need a little bit of massage before we could get them to work well.
Yep, I agree. Although I have to say the quality of the video from Hoover was not the same as it is from GoToMeeting and OnStream. Although OnStream had to be recorded from my screen after we did the interview because they didn't allow the direct download of the MP4s.
Right, right. And that, I think they're just geared for a different market, but we'll get into some of those in a later conversation. So off to the topic of the day, which is click fraud. And we had a lot of content in our email this week regarding click fraud because there were a lot of articles that we found. And so it was something that I thought was kind of new. What do you think?
I don't think it's a new topic. I just think it's getting some more play lately. I think click fraud's been around a long time. Way back when I was doing individual consulting with companies, one of their big concerns with Google ads and even Facebook ads were their competitors just clicking on their ad to drive up the budget. And it was something I always I would downplay because almost every Google AdWords campaign I ever ran had a credit back after the campaign ended for clicks they couldn't verify. So I think Google's been monitoring this issue for a long time. And I've never found budgets to go skyrocketing because of it. I think it's something that's, look, fraud in that regard has been around a long time. And I think when you and I were talking, I had likened it to coupon fraud. Years ago, people would photocopy coupons and bring them in and try to redeem them to sort of take advantage of a business, and that could very well have been your competitor. So those are issues that businesses have been facing forever. I don't think it's a reason to not do something. Google AdWords, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, they work for the right business and with the right ad. It's something that'll be around forever. It's something that I applaud Google for taking an effort to stem this. But I think if people want to cheat the system, they're going to find a way.
Unfortunately, your last point I do agree with. There are plenty of people out there trying to overcome or cheat the system, as you mentioned. I don't agree that it's similar to the coupons, though. I mean, when you have a coupon in print, right? So we're talking print coupons. Really the expense to the business is just the cost of printing it. There's no money being put out there unless there's a purchase with the coupon. And if I put 100 coupons out and somebody actually duplicates it and it brings in more customers and I didn't have to print them, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. But you compare that to the online ads where I do have to pay as a business owner ahead of time, or at least as the click-throughs are coming. So it's noble for Google to be giving credits. So from a budgetary standpoint, I can see, okay, it didn't cost me as much. But when we start talking about metrics and reports as far as how many click-throughs I got, how can a business translate the credit they're getting, because Google understands some of it might be fraud, to the actual metrics I'm getting from Google? How much of those were clicks that will never really turn into a conversion or turn into a potential customer, which is the whole reason I'm doing an online ad in the first place.
That's actually a great point. And it goes to an article that I believe we had shared through our insights a week or two ago about the metrics that we should be tracking. Is it just the click-throughs that businesses should be tracking? And the research says no, the click-through is not what's important. It's time spent on site. And I think Google is looking at those metrics overall and saying, okay, somebody clicked through, the goal of the ad was a purchase. They clicked through, they bounced off the site. This was not a valid click. So Google is looking at this holistically, as business owners should be. So I've got 1,000 clicks on my ad to my website, but 900 of them bounced right away. Those are 900 clicks that it doesn't matter if you're paying for them or not, they were useless. So I think it goes to sort of a two-prong. What did I want my ad to accomplish? If it was strictly to drive traffic to a website, it's much harder to use metrics. You need the end game, the end goal. When companies run an ad that advertises a product or a service, and you're driving traffic to the homepage and there's no move through the site, I don't care who it is, you've wasted the money. So click fraud or not, you're spending money you don't need to be spending.
Because even if they were interested, the website isn't delivering on the promise.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what about mobile? We were talking about mobile app hijacking, where they sort of embed an app that replicates human interaction. And I know that's probably more difficult to track. And as we reported, Google is definitely watching the apps that seem to be coming out as utilizing that and removing them from the App Store. But they're always sort of one step ahead, yes?
People who want to take advantage of you are always going to be one step ahead. You're absolutely right. And I think the app hijacking that you're referring to, it's a little bit different. That relates directly to the advertiser. So they're paying the app company based upon number of clicks. So if the app gets 1,000 clicks, they make more money than if it got 100. So they're taking advantage also. Now, I don't know what the review process is, Apple versus Google within their app store. This is strictly a Apple versus Google conversation. I think Apple is much more stringent with their app approval process, and it's less likely to happen with an Apple device than a Google Android device. Doesn't mean it's not there. I think Google is making these people work harder to cheat the system, which is good. I'm sorry?
Did you say Google is or Apple?
Well, both technically. Apple makes it very difficult. Google is trying to make it harder.
Right.
But there's always going to be that avenue, that person that cheats the system. Back in my former life when I was running the franchise, we used to get this all the time, that customers, as soon as we figured out what they were doing and made a change, they'd figure something else out. And we're not talking brain surgery. We can, people are fairly intelligent and resourceful. It's always going to be an issue. What businesses, I think, can do best is go beyond tracking website clicks. So if you're running that ad and you're getting the click-throughs, if you see 1,000 clicks to your ad, but yet nobody's spending more than a second or two on your site, you have the ability to go back, I believe, to Google and say, look, we think there's an issue here. As far as mobile, I think Google's doing a great thing with their mobile ads and making it more difficult to click on them. That's not necessarily click fraud. That's more, whoops. Yeah, how many times have you done it with the, I'm using an iPhone 5S. It's a smaller screen than the new 6. I have less room to scroll. I click on ads by accident sometimes. And so they're monitoring the quick jump back to the other page. So if I go back quickly, they don't count that as a click through. So they're making efforts.
So it sounds like mobile and desktop are similar, that it's easy to identify an accidental click if people are bouncing quickly off where they had clicked without realizing they were doing so. But if I hear you correctly, if your website or the final destination, could be another app, is getting a high amount of bounces, then there's two roads to go. One is back to the advertising campaign and whoever you've advertised with to question the metrics on their end, but also the other is to what you're doing as a business, whether it's an app or a website, and make sure that when people arrive via that ad, there's something of value at the end of that click.
You're absolutely right. People are so quick to blame fraud for non-conversion. I've had 1,000 clicks. It's got to be fraud because nobody bought. We need to also take that inside look at our own business and say, you know what? Well, I'm leading them to the wrong page. Their content isn't right. There's a myriad of answers to that, and it's difficult. It's not a science. There's art to some of that. Yeah, there really is. There's an art to marketing, and I think sometimes we forget that.
I totally agree. And so we'll leave it at that. There's an art to marketing, and don't be so quick to point the finger at click fraud. So thanks for listening and watching. We're always interested in what you have to say, so please feel free to leave comments at the bottom. And for my co-founder Craig and myself, have a great day. We'll see you next week at another conversation.